Hey guys, welcome back to the RCA RR-359 television restoration project. Boy, things are moving fast and furious. Since I'm going to focus on the power supply first, I wanted to put the upper chassis somewhere for safekeeping. I tried to install it briefly when I first got the set back. Now I've had time to study the cabinet and the chassis construction more. I felt more confident, and yes, I was able to install it actually without too much trouble. Sits on a rubber support on either side, and then just two screws on the front. You take those two screws out, the whole thing tips back. So now we can finally see it upright in the cabinet, and yes, there is a board that goes over this. Let me grab it. Go. And it just sits down in there like so. Now, as I've said, there aren't a whole lot of these in existence, and they all have not been thoroughly photographed and documented. But I did find a few online with the lid up like this, and what's happening in here seems to vary between every set. I don't know if any two I saw were identical, and I don't know if any of them quite matched mine. The serial number on the cabinet doesn't match my chassis. As I've heard from other collectors, that's not at all uncommon. So this chassis may have started life as an A and was upgraded to a B. This cabinet was always a B cabinet, and mixed and matched. I suspect there were other cabinets that were a 9 originally, and then they modified the screen bezel for a 12, and maybe this one was too. But there are also sets that only have 3 controls accessible up top instead of having them all here like mine does. While we're up here, might as well talk about knobs for a moment. I'm missing all the knobs on the front. The 6 on these controls, and there should be one for the non-existent tuner. Similar to these, but slightly different. These are Catalan. These are black. I've been told the ones on the front that are missing from mine will be swirled brown. I've also seen white. Amazingly, reproductions of these were made by, I believe, Renovated Radios, and I've had them make some reproduction parts for me too. You may recall I did a Philco 38.7CS chairside a while back, and it was missing some specialty rubber mounting parts. He molded some up and sold them. Similar to this, another collector sent him an example. They made molds and they had reproductions. The company has since changed ownership. They're not listed for sale. They probably still have the molds, so all is not lost. What I'm thinking of doing, meanwhile, is take 6 of these off and put them on the front and put something else in here. These have set screws, so I can't just pull them off right now, but that's the deal with the knob situation. Here's a screen bezel. About to pop this back on. On an earlier video, I was confused by it because the way it's currently configured, and the only way it will mount on it, the screen bezel is 90 degrees off from where it should be, and I can't move that inner rubber piece. And I couldn't figure out what was going on here. And I realized, oh, there are screws around the perimeter. If you take all those out, the inner part does rotate. I'm not going to do that right now, but I believe that solves that little mystery. You can also get a feel for what the original finish looked like on these inner surfaces. Obviously the outer is in miserable condition. That is a project for another day. Also, I want to do something about this piano hinge because it is a tad loose. I was reading about this mirror, that the way they described it in the info, a service guide, was, I think it said a chrome-plated steel or something like that. But I think this is a glass mirror, I'm pretty sure. It's like you can take a bunch of screws out and this opens up. I'm not going to do that. But yeah, it sure looks like glass to me. Yes, believe it or not, I did manage to carry the power supply down into the basement workshop and get it up on the workbench. Right now it's just leaning on a piece of wood. It's going to go onto this, which is the Lazy Susan I picked up. I got it from Woodpeckers, I guess, is the name of the company. There's the skew. It's good for, it's 12 inches in diameter, good for 1,000 pounds. Seems to work just fine. I used it with my CTC5 chassis for a test spin. Now, rather than screwing it down to my workbench and screwing it to a board up above, it seems to work well enough just sitting here. The weight of what I'm going to put on this will keep it from moving around. And I don't want to drive screws into my workbench if I can avoid it. I'm not going to be using this all the time for every project. So let me put some more wood up on top of this. So this is stepped a bit. We've got side of the chassis, and then we've got a high voltage box, a transformer, and then transformers down here. That's the main power supply transformer. It's massive, and flanking that on either side is a huge filter choke. So of course I want to put this heavy side down. So I figure I'll use the main board to catch this, and then a little step up to rest the transformers and filter chokes onto. Just kind of centered, figure out where I want to put this, and then pick this up and gently set it down on top of it. And there we go. Works like a charm. Alright. I went over this chassis in a previous video. I'll give you a quick rundown again. So as I said, main power, transformer, filter choke, 2 rectifiers. Now rather than running these in parallel, they parallel the plates on either one. So effectively each one of these is just a single diode. But they're run as a half-wave rectifier, working with each other. We have 2 filter caps here. There were 2 down there that were not original. I just removed them for these guys. I want to track down 2 more like this. These are the originals. They have 2 dots on the top. See, these do not. More about that when we get into this. 3 of these should be identical. They're all 18 microfarad electrolytics, and there's one that's 10 microfarads. It has more voltage across it than these others do. The 318s all go in parallel to make 154 microfarad cap. So theoretically, when I restuff these, I could just restuff one of them and leave the other 2 empty or disconnected if I chose to. That is a transformer that was added. Not crazy about it, but the reason they had to is that this high voltage transformer up here is not the original. The original would have had 2 isolated 2.5 volt filament windings for the 2 independent rectifier tubes in this, and a high voltage secondary. The replacement only has 1 filament winding and the high voltage winding, so they added a second 2.5 volt filament rectifier down here. Now I was surprised to read up the specs on these on the big tube. See, an 878 high voltage rectifier, this big guy. The filament on that draws 5 amps at 2.5 volts, so beefy tube. I hope that transformer's good. Well, see, I'm a little torn. I hope that transformer's good, but even if it is good, this is not how it's supposed to go. The original transformer had the high voltage, all the wires came out through the bottom. There was nothing coming out the side here. This is very hacky, and of course I don't like having an added transformer up here that wasn't here originally. The odds of me finding an original are 0. They were custom just for this, so that's not likely to happen. These other boxes, so we have several capacitors in here, paper, foil, and tar block, basically. This is the filter choke for the high voltage supply, or filter chokes, 2 of them in here, and that is the Focus high voltage transformer, and these are high voltage caps. Alright, so first thing I want to do is check for continuity. The service info shows you the resistance reading between a bunch of key points on here, so I'm going to grab a multimeter and start going through and checking this stuff. Alright, I have some results for you guys. One, I'm sure this will be a shock to all of you, the candome resistor is bad. It's open, so we've got to replace that. Now, as for the transformers, blue dot means they're good, brown X means it's bad. All the filter chokes are good, both on the B plus and the high voltage filter chokes. The focus high voltage transformer down here is good, but this high voltage transformer is bad. The high voltage secondary is open, and that's the one that I was just talking about that was hacked into this set, so it's not original anyways. Oh, it does mean I got to track down something to replace this with, but I'm not too torn up about it because I don't like the way it looks and I don't like the way it works. Here's the high voltage filament windings coming out of it. This one's fine. Nice rubber insulated, goes over to this point. The other wire wasn't long enough, so they spliced into this and wrapped a whole bunch of electrical tape around it. I can see the wire exposed right there. Yeah, 6,000 volts or so on this. That's ugly. Sure, I could do a better job of splicing and put some high voltage insulation around it, but we still have the issue of the added transformer. So, Alice, also this doesn't fit right. They had to add this mounting bracket. It's supposed to have slotted tabs that go through here, and obviously it didn't. Oh, geez, I'm just noticing now. They also had to cut out and drill out holes in the chassis. I'm guessing the original wires came out here and here. Yeah, that's represented on this wiring and voltage diagram here. So these two holes were original, but they cut these notches they cut out are not. See, there's a slot there, a slot there, a slot there, a slot there, there, and there. So yeah, there were 3 slots up here, 3 slots down there, and there were tabs that came through from the transformer and were bent over. Those are all gone. This is being held on by some twisted wire and this bracket, and it's loose. So we'll be taking that out. I already mentioned this to another collector, Daryl, who's been helping me out extensively with this project. He gave me the dimensions from one of his sets. He also said that one of his was bad, and he was able to buy off-the-shelf parts. I went shopping around a little bit already on eBay. So I need 2 2.5 volt AC filament transformers that are insulated for 10 kilovolts would be good for overhead. The one for the focus, probably 2 or 3 kilovolts would be enough, because that's only has about 1.5 kilovolts on that secondary. But this has a good 6,000 volts, so I want at least 8,000. 10,000 seems to be commonly available. I ordered one of them up, made by Triad. It looks a little large, but at least it's something. And I got a 6,000 volt 5 milliamp transformer from an industrial device that eliminates static buildup. I'm not sure how ionizing the air with high voltage eliminates static, but it's something to that effect. Anyways, there's a bunch of them on the surplus market, so I ordered one of those up, and they look pretty modestly sized. I think those 2 transformers would fit in this box. I don't know about 2 of those filament transformers fitting inside the box, but at least that with those 2 and the existing added-on transformer, that'll be enough to proceed. All right, what else? So as I mentioned, we have some electrolytics. There's 4 of them. I want to track down original cans eventually and restuff them, ideally with caps like this. There's a 10 microfarad, 600 volt polypropylene film cap, rather than using electrolytic. Why? Because these will essentially last forever. This is not an original cap, but this should fit inside here. I'm using my caliper. This guy, is about 37.5 millimeters in diameter, and this is 33. Now, of course, we'll need some thickness for the aluminum walls, but they're not going to be that thick, so it probably fit in here. However, that's not that is not an original If I check an original, and original is 35. So just 2 millimeters outer diameter larger than this. If the walls are 1 millimeter thick, yeah, this might just slide inside. But the problem is, it's 10 microfarad. The originals were 18. I was thinking I would get 2 of these and parallel them up inside the can. There'd be just enough room to fit 2 of these inside this can, for example, and wire them in parallel. However, if this fit is that snug, I can't run any wires down inside to hook them up in parallel, or even to run one end down so we got both leads coming out the end. Like say I was going to put this inside this can and it just fits. What I would have to do is take this lead and somehow weld it, bond it to the aluminum here if there's not enough room to run a wire down. So that's a work in progress. For now, I could tack new caps underneath just to get this thing going. Resistors. I do want to fabricate replica dog bones. I've got materials and a plan in place on how to do that. I need to order up some stuff, but again, for now, I could clip these out and just tack the new resistors in. This board is cracked. I can try to glue that, but it's also a bit warped and deformed. We do have 6,000 volts on this. We want something stable and reliable, so it might be better to replace it. Or replace it with what? I can get phenolic stock, and I could cut out a strip, but I would need to transfer all of these terminals. Impossible, but just more work. So there's that box capacitor on top. I also got some boxy type plastic film caps. These are far more readily available than the round type, and these will fit inside, no problem. One thing kind of irked me with these though, let me grab the third one. Here we go. So these are the 3 that I want to put inside of that cardboard box. Got plenty of room to spare. What bugged me though is these only come in certain dimensions. They must be industry standards. Or probably they make the outer plastic shell in mass and they just stuff caps inside. So 10 microfarad 500 volt, 10 microfarad 160 volts. They're exactly the same size. And they cost about the same. I might as well just have gotten 2 500 volt caps. I was thinking this would be smaller than it was. Honestly, after looking through parts catalogs for several hours, my eyes are kind of starting to water over when it came to dimensions and looking at stuff. This is a 47 and 210s, different voltage ratings, basically all the same size. Again, well actually the originals are non-polarized. There are only 4 polarized caps in this entire set. They seem crazy to you guys who work on newer stuff, but yeah, back then, most caps were still made in tar blocks with paper and foil. So that's another reason why I don't want to use these guys. I could use electrolytics in there, figure out which end is positive and which is negative, but since these are available, they're not that expensive, I don't know, $7, $8 each. Given the rarity of this set and all that, I don't mind spending a few bucks for parts. All right, which leaves one last thing. Actually, 2 things. I think I mentioned earlier about tube sockets. The tube sockets they used in this set are not great. They're great in terms of the metal contacts that go into these pins. They make a really tight grip on there. They're actually 2 pieces of U-shaped metal, an outer one and an inner one. And on the top side where the pin starts coming down, they actually made a funnel. So it kind of catches the pin and guides it in and then it spreads out. So there's plenty of force on there, lots of a good grip, but that also leads to the problem. So they make fantastic electrical connection, but it puts a lot of force on the phenolic wafer that it's mounted to, and a number of them, especially these 2 in the power supply, are cracked. This one's completely broken loose. I got to replace them. I'm not sure what I want to go with. I did a quick look around my stash and some stuff on eBay, and I didn't find any that were exactly this type. I'd be inclined, at least for these 2 power supply rectifiers, to use something a little bit more robust, a little bit newer. And then the other thing is the wiring. Some of the wiring is natural rubber type, and it's all cracked. Super brittle. I can see exposed wire here and there. It's all got to go. What I plan on using is modern PVC, 600 volt rated, solid core, same diameter. It's the same outer diameter, same wire gauge. I can get all the same colors. I got a red and a green and yellow wires down here. The only minor thing to some folks would be that there's printing on this. Yes, it does say made in USA and 22 AWG 600V 105C on it. It's not that noticeable. Obviously, it's going to be underneath the chassis. Would it be nice to get wiring without printing? Can I get wiring without printing? Maybe. But I also have a rainbow assortment of 100-foot long spools of this stuff, so I'd kind of like to use it. Other wiring is cloth. They seem to use cloth wiring whenever they were going to have laced up wire bundles, like over here. All these laced wires, I believe. Oh, there's a cloth. Sorry, there's one or two rubber coated, but the bulk of them are cloth. It seems like the cloth ones especially are the ones that go right into the filter chokes and transformers. So like here's a main power transformer right here, and filter chokes. All the wires coming in and out of these chokes and transformers is cloth covered. Generally, it's okay. But here and there, it's a bit frayed, or it's because of ugly old repairs. So they added that filament transformer, or they replaced the high voltage transformer. Here's the primary. They just spliced it in, wrapped it, soldered it, didn't even bother putting electrical tape or anything over it. That's not going to fly. I got to do something better than that. But since that's going to the transformer I'm about to take out anyways, we'll deal with that when we get to it. But that's my plan. Replace the rotting rubber wire. See, there's some more sticking out here. This green wire is really horrible. Replace this with PVC and replace the cloth as needed with appropriate cloth wiring. Right now, since it's bad and I'm on the road to replacing it anyways, I'm going to go ahead and take out this high voltage transformer up here. And as far as taking the caps out goes, I just ordered myself up a 1-inch deep well socket to fit over these caps have giant nuts on the end, and wires come out the end. So this should work a treat on the two that are left down in here. But I do have wires going to them, so I can't put them on yet until I disconnect these wires, which I don't want to do until I'm ready to start putting in some new wires. So, mixed bag. I mean, if I had to pick something that was going to be bad, might as well be the part that's not original to this anyways. That was a little bit of a setback, I suppose, but also rather satisfying to remove all the components that are not original to this chassis. So out goes a high voltage transformer, the added filament transformer, and I already took out those two caps. Here's what they look like. And here's that high voltage transformer. I believe this had tabs on it originally. They just broke those off, added this bracket, cut a notch out of this plastic insulating plate and drilled a hole to mount it to the chassis. So I'll give them some points for some creativity. If you're wondering what's inside of these, just all sealed with tar. I'm sure all of these are as well. And I can really see how they tortured this chassis to mount that guy. But the good thing is, assuming I can find or fabricate a replacement box, it will completely cover those scars, I do believe. So 3 tabs on this side into those holes, and 3 on this side. Spacing's not the same. This just comes down to how far over does it come on this edge. You might see a little bit of this, but not that big a deal. This is 2 high voltage caps. This is a guy that was being bent over by this high voltage lead. Well, that's no longer an issue. So I'll straighten that out a little bit. Turntable also works rather nice in this configuration. I was just a moment ago given the dimensions of the original transformer by my mentor Daryl, and I do believe it's very similar, maybe identical to the size of this, just to give you some idea. Now, I've also ordered up transformers that I believe will do the trick now that I know what the dimensions are. I ordered up 2 triad 2.5 volts AC 10 amp filament transformers rated for 10,000 volts and a 6,000 volt 5 milliamp transformer from a more modern industrial application. I saw a bunch of them surplus on eBay and grabbed one. That I'm a little less certain how much space it takes up. But I can tell you the filament transformers, they're a little bit smaller than this. They're not as wide, or I know that they will fit width-wise in the box mounted in this position, and the box is tall enough I can put them on top of each other, which leaves the whole other side for the high voltage transformer. So I'll be able to look out for a box. I'll post the exact dimensions. I'm hoping an RCA radio or some other device from this era, from the 30s with the tab construction, will be close enough in size to fit. I hate to say it, but I've scrapped out 1 or 2 of them over the years, and I may have thrown one away myself. I'll contact my local antique radio club and see what they can do, see what they can scrounge up. Here's what I'm talking about. I'm familiar with these because of this long neglected WRA columnar radio that I've been slowly working on. So, hey, I wonder. Oh, it's close. It's close. Tab spacing's not right. But it's also not quite the right size. But that's what I'm talking about doing. Oh, I see. So there's 4 on one side and 3 on the other. So maybe it was very, very similar to this. And the 4th tab has just got chewed up here. Boy, that comes pretty darn close to fitting. Of course, I need this for my other project, but that's what I'm talking about, doing, is scavenging one of these from a radio. Now, this radio was painted brown originally, whereas this was just all as raw metal. Of course, I could strip the paint off one of these if I got one that was the right size. Speaking of which, what are we going to do with this stuff? In terms of the condition, we can see where I remove that transformer what the base metal looks like. You know, I like to use CLR on projects, so I imagine if I give this main chassis a CLR bath, wipe down, I can get the whole thing looking pretty much like that. Which leaves these guys. This one especially is corroded badly. Now, I could bend up these tabs, disconnect all the wires, remove this, remove the rust with a product of my choosing, clean up all the chassis underneath it, remount it, rewire it, bend the tabs back over. I kind of don't want to do that, at least not at this stage, because that's a lot of work and it's going to introduce trauma into the wiring and the transformer. Those tabs are mild steel. You can bend them a few times, but they will start developing metal fatigue. They will start breaking off. So I don't want to do that too much. I added that wood frame inside, by the way, to hold the new caps I put in, or something like that. It's been so many years since I started that project that I really need to get back to it someday. Anyways, well, one thing I'm especially psyched about is being able to restore the original wiring. So no more with that high voltage wire going out here and all that. I can make it exactly like it was originally. Now, Radiola 82 radios are relatively common, as is the 80, which uses essentially the same transformer. And I remembered, hey, I parted out an 80 a decade ago or so, and I wasn't sure if I kept the chassis or not. Yes, I did. And this, gentleman, is why you should never, ever throw anything away. That should fit perfectly in the RR-359. I said these are not rare or particularly valuable. That's the cabinet was damaged in the set this came out of, so I don't have any reservations about removing this. So I'll need to, of course, cut all the wires off, carefully bend the tabs, and then I'm going to have to bake this out, heat it up somehow. It's going down into the single digits. It's middle of winter here. I don't particularly want to put this in our oven, but I'll figure out a way eventually to heat this up and melt out the tar that's holding the transformer inside and clean it all out. And I think we're in business with this. I guess I should strip the paint off it too. That's hard to tell, but this is painted brown. Let's see where it's chipped off here. Whereas the 359 is bare metal. So if I want it to match, I should strip that out. I was hoping that maybe these sockets would also work out, but I can see that where the rivets are, they're really far apart. This is not the same type. And by the way, this is from like 1929, 1930, so years before the 359 was made. I guess they used this style for quite a while. But yeah, none of these sockets, I don't think they're going to be suitable. This also used that same wooden support down below, but it's much smaller than the 359, so I can't salvage that. But hey, maybe we can salvage some of this wiring. Looks to be in pretty good shape. It is stiff and crunchy though, so maybe not. But at any rate, we can get that transformer out. That is awesome. Very easy to extricate with a hammer and a flat-bladed screwdriver. Tap, tap, tap. Pry up the tabs. Now the moment of truth. Here's what the underside looks like. Of course, I just cut all the wires off. Got some card stock here. I'll have to carefully bend these tabs up, melt out the inside. I suppose I can possibly reuse that, but now the most important thing, does it actually fit? Let's see, yeah, it should go this way. 3 tabs on this side and 4 on the other. Yeah. Doesn't quite want to sit down, but I think I just have to give it a few taps and manipulate it a little bit. And yeah, there we go. How about that? How about that? Bit by bit, everything's falling into place. Alright, I think this is a good place to leave off. Transformers have been ordered. They're on the way. With the holidays and all that, I imagine it'll take maybe a couple weeks for all the stuff to show up. When it does, we'll resume and we'll see about how we can start wiring things back up and all that. So for now, thanks for watching.